right, welcome to Section 2, The Beginnings of War for Unit 5. We are going to get into the beginning of the Civil War today. And as I mentioned last time, westward expansion becomes one of the major issues moving closer to the Civil War because as we gain more land, it is a big question mark of what do we do with that land? Is it going to be free states or is it going to be slave states? In order for us to fully capture why this is an issue, we have to go back a little bit. The Louisiana Purchase is going to be our first major land acquisition, and we get that under Thomas Jefferson. And once we get that territory, the way we navigate the question of slavery in the very, very beginning is with the Northwest Ordinance, because that's all we had. Now, if we remember the Northwest Ordinance, this is all the way back from the Articles of Confederation. That was the only thing that the Articles did right. They told us how to take territories and turn them into states. The ordinance told us how many people needed to be in a territory before they could be a state, how we kind of draw the lines of the border of the state. And what else the ordinance told us was that there would be no slavery in any of the new territories. But if we use the Northwest Ordinance for the Louisiana Territory and any other territory we got after that, the balance in Congress between the free and the slave representatives from each state, that would be very upset because all land forever would be all free territories. And it would be very easy to get those representatives to pass a law to get rid of slavery. So that just couldn't happen. So we're going to see our first compromise with westward expansion be the Missouri Compromise of 1820. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 gives us three main pieces. The first piece is going to be that Missouri, this blue state right here with the MO, comes in as a slave state. Now, if we add a slave state, we have to add a free state to keep that balance. Remember, all about the balance. So the free state that gets added is going to be Maine, all the way up in the corner. So now we have a slave state, Missouri, coming in, and a free state, Maine, coming in. The Missouri Compromise also gives us a band-aid for the future on how to determine other states that want to come in to the Union. And what it does is the Missouri Compromise gives us the 3630 line, this red line right in between here. And what this line tells us is that any state that want to comes in above the line would be free, and any state that is about to enter below the line becomes slave. Now, that sounds easy. Henry Clay, when he comes up with this compromise, he thinks that he's got it, he's cracked the code. But what he doesn't realize is that what you and I can see when we look at this map, there is a significant more amount of land above the 3630 line than there is below. Which means that we have the potential for more states to be added above the line than below, which would clearly upset the balance between the free and the slave states. So this is only a band-aid for a bullet hole that is the issue of slavery, the status of slave and free states. But the Missouri Compromise is the first time we see this happen. So to give you a clearer picture, at this time we had 12 free states and 12 slave states in the Senate, which means that we're all equal on both sides. But Missouri wanted to enter the Union, so we have to answer, what is it going to be? Missouri becomes a slave state. So how do we keep that balance? Well, in order to keep that balance, we add Maine as a free state. That keeps the balance within the Senate exactly how we needed it to be. And in order to determine what would become of the future to preserve the balance in the Senate for years to come, we would say that the 3630 line is going to determine any unorganized territory that wants to become a state, and above the line would be free, and below the line would be slave. Congress is also going to ban slavery in the Louisiana Territory, north of the Missouri southern border, which is that 3630 line. The only slave state that can exist above the 3630 line is going to be Missouri. And when we look at this and we think, is this a win for states' rights in the South, or is this a win for the federal rights in the North? This is definitely going to favor the North because, as I said, there is way more territory above that 3630 line than there is below. Another issue that pushes us closer and closer to the beginnings of war is going to be the tariff. We have a tariff being passed by John Quincy Adams in 1828. This tariff is going to be labeled by the South the tariff of abominations. The South is going to claim that the tariff harmed their economy and protected the Northern economy. The South is going to respond with what they call the doctrine of nullification. South Carolina says that they are going to nullify the tariff. What does to nullify mean? Nullify means to get rid of, negate, ignore. And South Carolina says we're just going to not acknowledge that this tariff of 1828 exists because it hurts our economy and we as a state do not want to pay it. So South Carolina here is taking the power of the states to ignore a federal law that they believed was unconstitutional. Now, the question then becomes, can the states just ignore what laws they don't want to follow by the federal government? And the answer is no, they cannot. But instead of telling South Carolina this and angering South Carolina, there is a compromise tariff of 1833 passed. Again, we have the great compromiser, Henry Clay, coming in and coming up with a way to put a band-aid on these issues that the South is trying to blow up into bigger and bigger proportions. This tariff, this compromise tariff of 1833, is going to lower the rate of the tariff over 10 years, so decrease the tariff over 10 years. And what this does is just prevent South Carolina from leaving the Union in 1833. But just a few short years later, less than 30 years later, South Carolina is going to leave the Union. This is just the first time that they threaten it. The question here that is very important on the tariff is, do states have the right to ignore federal directives? And it brings up that question of the state's power versus the federal power yet again. We should be sensing a trend by now. Slavery in the new territories is also going to push us closer and closer to the Civil War. The Wilmot Proviso is going to be presented in Congress. This is just a proposed bill. It never actually becomes law, but the reason we need to talk about it is because for this bill to even be proposed in Congress is huge. This bill was supposed to state that there would be no slavery in any of the territories gained in the Mexican-American War. And it doesn't actually pass, but it shows that there are people who are threatening the expansion of slavery that don't want it to expand at all. There will be no compromise made by these people. And with this proposed bill, we're going to see the Free Soil Party come out in the election of 1848. The Free Soil Party forms, and it is exactly what you think it is, for the purpose of stopping the expansion of slavery. So this proposed bill leads us into a third party entering the election of 1848. The Free Soil Party is going to try to run old Martin Van Buren again. The people don't like Van Buren, but he just can't seem to take the hint here. So Martin Van Buren is going to run for the Free Soil Party. We're also going to have the Democrats run their candidate Cass, but the Whig Party is going to be the winner here with Zachary Taylor. Um, and Zachary Taylor's political slogan at this time was old, rough, and ready. Again, he's an old military leader. He was a slaveholder. So he captures both votes from the North, being a Whig, and from the South because he was a slaveholder, because he was the military leader. And we're seeing this delicate balance of a leader being able to appeal to both the North and South being kept. The only reason the Democrats couldn't get more votes is because they didn't really have a candidate that was running on keeping slavery. Cass is going to propose the idea of any new states added to the Union could use popular sovereignty to decide. And popular sovereignty just means that people could vote if they wanted to be a free or a slave state. But when Cass proposes this, it's not really a winning idea. It's not getting anyone anywhere. The importance of the election of 1848 isn't really the candidates because Zachary Taylor is not going to be a president that we discuss ad nauseum. But the reason we look at this election is because it's the first time that presidential candidates were openly discussing slavery in the new territories. So you can see that we're moving steps and steps closer to the Civil War and on these issues. Now, I want to cover one more major idea before I let you guys go for today, the Compromise of 1850. So we saw the Compromise of 1820, the Missouri Compromise. As I mentioned, the 3630 line is not going to be sustainable. Once we get past the Mexican American War and we gain all the lands out to California and we gain the Oregon Territory from the British, we now have to figure out what are those territories going to be? What is the possibility for those territories? The answer is going to come from the Compromise of 1850. California, big, huge state, is going to be admitted as a free state. And we consider this a win for the North. That is huge. But when we add California as a free state, we have to make this a true compromise. So the South is also going to have to get something out of this compromise. And what the South ends up getting are the fugitive slave laws. Now, the fugitive slave laws establish that everybody is a slave catcher. So, any slave that runs away that you find, you have to return because they are property, which creates a problem for people like Harriet Tubman that are running the Underground Railroad, aiding and abetting slaves from escaping the South. This now makes it illegal for those activities. The North comes to really resent these fugitive slave laws because they don't want to. A lot of the abolitionists, those wanting to get rid of slavery, like Harriet Tubman, are going to say, I don't want to be a slave catcher, but the fugitive slave laws force that to happen. We are going to see posters like this be posted in the North. Caution, kidnappers, slave catchers, keep a sharp lookout, kidnappers. They have a top eye open, they're coming to get you. But the reason this is a win for the South is because it guaranteed the rights of Southern slaveholders to pursue and recover their property that may have escaped to Northern soil. Now, I know it's crazy to think about this, but slaves were property. And the Southerners believed that they had a right to their property, even if that property tried to escape. The abolitionists are going to be the ones that are behind posting these posters such as this. Um, And just to reiterate here, focus on this quote. The fugitive slave law stated that every citizen was responsible for helping to recover, punish, and return fugitive slaves. So any white person from the North or South could be and were expected to be a fugitive slave catcher. Regardless of what your beliefs were, this was a federal law and you had to follow it. Fugitive slave laws are a major win for states' rights. They're a major win for the South. Now, we have a huge question. What the heck do we do with all of this Western territory that we got in the Mexican secession, the Utah and New Mexico territory? What the heck do we do? How are they going to be decided if they're free or if they're slave? Well, the answer becomes they get to vote. We are going to use popular sovereignty in these territories. Remember, popular sovereignty means the vote of the people. Here, we're going to use the vote of the people living in these territories to decide if they want to be a free state or a slave state. They get to choose. So the vote is up to them. Now, this here, when we question, is it a win for the North? Is it a win for the South? Well, we consider it a win for federal rights for the North because the possibility of outlawing slavery is there. Slavery is not guaranteed in these territories, and we fully expect that these territories would vote to remain free and to outlaw slavery. So, just to summarize, the Compromise of 1850 is meant to help us on this debate over the status of new states. The compromise, again, is going to be put together by Henry Clay. He is going to say, geez, guys, I've done this before. Let's try it again. Let's see if this is a little bit more long term, the compromise that we make here. So, what we get in the North, like I said, California is going to enter as a free state, which is huge. Another major win for the North is that slave trade is going to be stopped in DC, which just means that we are not importing any more slaves to the nation's capital. The wins for the South, we're going to say that the slavery is not forbidden in the Utah and New Mexico territories. We're using popular sovereignty, the people's right to vote there. The win for the South in DC is that you can still hold slaves. You may not be able to purchase more, but you also are not going to be denied your right to the property that you already have. And also remember the major win for the South in the Compromise of 1850 is going to be the fugitive slave laws, which pushes everybody that sees a runaway slave to be a slave catcher. These fugitive slave laws are going to anger the North, increasing the tensions between the North and the South. And some historians will argue that because of the fugitive slave laws and the refusal of the North in a lot of cases to follow the fugitive slave laws, and the South resenting those that don't follow the fugitive slave laws, increase tensions and makes this compromise even less successful than the Missouri Compromise. Next time we come together, we will wrap up the section on the beginnings of war. Don't forget your homework for tonight, and any questions, let me know. You guys have a great day.